Hi, I'm pleased and honored to welcome my colleague, Richard French, host of Richard French Live. People can see it every night. What time? Where?
6 o'clock on all FiOS and RNN channels.
You and your...
I love the digs.
Right. Well, this is NJTV.
I tell you.
Not bad, right?
Very impressive.
Now, you have an impressive studio, too, as well. By the way, tell folks what your show looks like, feels like, because you love and are obsessed by, in a healthy way, politics and public policy.
Well, you know, a little bit of everything. Obviously, you got the president who keeps everybody a little busy. We've got an interesting campaign season, some big social issues going on right now. So a little bit of regional, a little bit of national. We also like to include the viewers, whether it be some live calls and stuff like that. So it's an hour every night, 6 to 7, Monday through Friday, and no shortage of interesting things to talk about.
By the way, where Richard is sitting right now, we had Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno and Ambassador Phil Murphy, the two leading candidates for governor, as a part of a series we're doing simply called New Jersey's Next Governor. It will be actually airing on FiOS 1 October 12th at 9 p.m. But let's go back. Talk Trump. What is the biggest concern you have about him, and where is his greatest opportunity?
On the concern front, forgetting even on the policy, the developments that are unfolding as it relates to the investigation, the no-knock warrants for Paul Manafort that we're learning about, the clear intent on the investigation to literally treat this almost like a mob case. There is no shortage of seriousness or consequences potentially for an administration that hasn't seemed to handle adversity or confusion well. And I think that this is going to put even further pressures, and I don't know what will happen as a consequence out of it. So you have that parallel going on with, obviously, international incidents. You have, obviously, major issues, whether it do in terms of budgetary or debt limits, and now on top of that, or DACA, certainly. And I know you've spoken to a lot of folks as I would be directly impacted by that. And uncertainty, again, is something that we can talk about in political terms, but it's real-life issues for those folks. And similarly for healthcare reform right now, what will and won't happen with a repeal, even if they find the vote. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. It's hard for any administration, but with the cloud of controversy and possible indictments coming down, it makes it even that much harder.
Let's talk political discourse. Trump's part of that. One of the things I always have loved about your show is that it's civil. People disagree, but it's always respectful. It's not so disagreeable in the sense of tone and tenor. Long-winded question, I know, Rich. What reason do you have to be optimistic about the level and the tone of political discourse in our country and the ability to actually talk about things without calling each other names? You're the enemy, you're not with me, I've got to try to hurt you. You know what I'm talking about.
It sounds simple, but I don't think it can get any worse. So I think whoever follows, whether it be in 3 years and 7 years or whatever time in between, as the next president, I think, regardless of your politics, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever, will in all likelihood, because we've never seen anything like this before, be more traditional and more less adversarial. They won't use Twitter as a weapon at 2 in the morning. And the caustic nature that we've seen, I mean, something as simple as that GIF where he's hitting a golf ball off of the back of Hillary's head going up a tarmac. You know, some people will laugh, but some people will say, this is the president. This is the office of the presidency.
He says this is his greatest tool to connect with the American people.
And maybe it is, and maybe he has direct connectivity and there's no filter, but I think there's been a consequence to that. We've seen Charlottesville, we've seen other things. It's a complicated question. It's a complicated answer. I just believe, regardless of a Republican or Democrat, whoever follows him into office, I think the temperature will be lowered, or at least that's my hope.
So you've been in the media for a few years. I've been there with you. I say fake news, you say?
I don't know what that means anymore. I don't know. I mean, I find people we meet in our personal lives, let alone professional lives, they're so stratified where you can now live in your own independent world regardless of reality. If you want to go to certain sites that will either feed conspiracy theories, feed only one specific political thought, disregard facts entirely and just live that way, you can do that now, I think, at your detriment. I mean, I always tell this example. My late grandfather was a bus driver, but he would never get on that bus in the morning unless he read 2 or 3 papers. And they weren't all right, they weren't all left, but he wanted to know what's going on because he would feel like an idiot if he opened his mouth to say something that was uninformed. Today, you take pride almost, some people, in saying, it's how I feel, it's my gut.
Well, what about the facts?
Exactly. What about the facts? So it's a hard question to answer what's fake news and what isn't.
Where's
I just
our
think
role,
it's a
though,
knee-jerk. You try and inform. I think people will always describe a particular motive, whether it's fair or not. And unfortunately, you just hope that people can weigh enough information. I think part of it's consumption models. You know that. People like to get things in a certain amount of characters or in less than 2 minutes, and you can't get context with that.
By the way, our show, the New Jersey's Next Governor show, so many insightful, smart questions. Talk about meaningful discourse. So many insightful questions came from FiOS One and the website and our partners, together with Rich and his team. Why does this race in New Jersey matter nationally? It's one of only 2 in the nation with Virginia, right?
It is. I think people sometimes overread trend lines. We've seen that in a lot of races we followed where there isn't a domino that'll follow after this. But I think in a state which is, well, as you know as well as anybody, you got registration more blue than red, but not dramatically so. I think whatever the margin that turns out for this race will be wake-up calls, whether it be at the RNC or the DNC, and also some of the language. Yes, Murphy's an outsider, if you will, but kind of, sort of. I mean, he certainly is an accomplished person in the business world. He was an ambassador before that. He has a lot of connections that you know very well within the Garden State. But yet he's not coming from a traditional route.
And Lieutenant Governor?
Lieutenant Governor, to me, the narrative that I'd love somebody to explain to me is she has been a loyal soldier for this governor. And I must have missed outreach or efforts. And I know the poll numbers would say maybe he's more of an anchor than a benefit, but there's been so little efforting done to advance. And I'll give a small example.
Real quick, a few seconds.
Right. We go on that walk to Washington. Throw the Lieutenant Governor a bone. Let her be the star of the event. You know, I just think that she hasn't been served well.
Rich French, you can catch him every night. What time?
6 o'clock.
Where?
FiOS One News, New Jersey. You also got it on RNN on every system.
Thank you, partner.
Thank you very much.
Well
I
done.
appreciate it. You
Appreciate
too.
it. That was great.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, JAG Physical Therapy, Georgian Court University, Valley National Bank, Verizon, and by Fedway Associates.